Okay, there you go. You're in.
Want to sit next to these nice people in here? All right, good morning, everyone. So happy to see everyone here this morning. And see, we have some people on Zoom land as well. So welcome to everyone. Shakoni and Bibero. Okay, we're jumping into Parshat Shemot. And by the way, are there any handouts still? Oh, okay, you'll take care of it. Thank you so much. Okay, come on in, welcome. There's plenty of room up front. And okay, so for today, I'd like to deal with more or less one topic as you're sensing, and the topic for today, based on the parsha, is the Jew in exile and relations with the host country. And so, primarily today, we're going to focus on really one parish of the Orach Chaim. And so that'll be the bulk of today's session. We'll have a couple of other points to make as well. All right, as usual, we will entertain thoughts and comments. I have a section particularly devoted to reactions later on in the presentation. So let's begin with the first pasuk, and the second pasuk is from the Parsha, Perek Aleph, and verses 6 and 7. And I forgot to put the page numbers on the page, but don't have too many, so I think we'll be able to handle it. My apologies, and again, my typos are mine. Hopefully there won't be too many. Okay. Vayamas Yosef b'chol acha b'chol hador hahu. It seems like this is pretty benign pasuk. It says that Yosef died, and all of his brothers, and the whole generation. And then the next pasuk says, "Ubnei Yisrael paru vayishritzu vayirbu v'yatzmu b'mo ma'ov atim alei haaretz osam." And the Bnei Israel were fertile, prolific. They gave birth, multiplied, and increased greatly. And so the land was filled with them. So what we're going to deal with is, what is the connection between the second pasuk and the first pasuk, right? We see that a generation died off, and then we see that there was increase. All right, normally what happens is that there's one generation goes down, and then another generation comes, and he emphasizes that there's a tremendous increase. Okay, that's a bit of a chiddush, so we have to see what is the point on the heels of that first pasuk. And in the back in the first pasuk, why does it have to express each of those phrases by itself, right? Why does it have to say that Yosef died, his brothers died, and the generation, right? If the pasuk could have said much more, the whole generation died off. It would have included the brothers, and it would have included Yosef, right? So we have to deal on an exegetical level with this question, right? If you look at it, you don't even realize it. But the Orach Chaim teaches us that you have to look at every word of the Torah very closely. And there's something that we can derive from each of these phrases. Okay, so let's take a look at the Orach Chaim. I gave you the English translation. I felt like that the Hebrew would have been, there's a lot to cover. If I gave you the Hebrew, it would have been many more pages. And I just felt like we could save some trees, right? So if you want the Hebrew, you can go back into the Mikros Gedolos. While I'm beginning here, I also wanted to acknowledge my special daughter, Talia, who's here. She loves learning Torah. I always go over my drushas and shiurim with her, and she always has an open ear, and also teaches me things and as well. And she's really devoted to Jewish community and to Torah. So it's a delight that you're here with us today. All right, so let's jump in. And Joseph died, right? Why does the Torah have to repeat again that Joseph died? Another question was that we were told in last week's Parsha that Yosef had died. So now, Nachamol, before Joseph died, now we have to keep repeating it. And if we learn it, now we have to be sad again that Joseph died. Like I repeat it again. I'm like, oh, Yosef died. I love Yosef, as you know, from the last couple of weeks. Yosef, wonderful guy. Now he's passed away. Now I have to relive that again. So we've heard this already. And second, why do we have to be told that all the brothers and the generation of the Bnei Israel who would come to Egypt died? What is the connection between the deaths of the brothers and the generation, and then the connection to the next pasuk about the proliferation of the next generation of Bnei Israel, right? And now he also has a very profound grammatical problem. He says, if this was the only description of the manner in which the Jewish population explosion in Egypt occurred, the Torah should have been written by Yifru Vayishritzu Bnei Israel, right? And use the regular grammar, Vayomer, etc. Someone tells to someone, Vayomer Ruvain el Shimon. It's used with the Vav Hamapechet, right? The Vav that turns the future into the past. That's the normal way you grammatically in the Torah. That's the way you say something. But here, the emphasis is not on the fact that they exploded in population, but the fact is Bnei Israel paru. So the focus is grammatically. We see that the focus is on not the fact, but just that the issue that Bnei Israel increased. So we have to detect something that the Torah is trying to teach us with that language. All right. Sometimes grammar, is a little bit dull, but sometimes grammar can really elucidate something very important to us. So this is a very interesting grammatical point. So the Orach Chaim is sensitive to the idea that the Torah is trying to teach us something different than just the simple fact that Bnei Israel proliferated in ancient Egypt. All right, so he says in the bottom half of the page, the two psukim must be read together, describing the beginning of Jewish servitude and its causes. He's already sensing that what's going to happen to the Jewish people is they're going to be subjugated. And so he's reading that these two psukim are setting up the conditions for that servitude. Right? And you can't separate what the psukim are saying here with what's going to happen next. So he's already looking ahead at the whole point. Okay, and he says that there are 4 causes that brought about the enslavement of the Jewish people. We know that the Jewish people were going to be enslaved, but how did it occur? Right? So this is something that occurs throughout Bereshis and Shemot, that we know that the Hashem is guiding things from above, but we also know that it's acting on a human level as well. So both the divine and the human level are paralleling one another. It's a profound thing if you review and you think about it, and it's something not for now, but I want to throw that out there to everybody, right? Because it's a question that we have. Well, if it's Hashem is doing it, then why do we care? No, but Hashem says through the Torah, no, we do care how it happens on a human level as well. And it makes me see that, Hashem is guiding things, even though we have free will. It's that old famous question that if it's going to happen, then what free will do we have? That's the philosophical question, not for now, but just to be left with the idea that yes, that thing is harishus nisuna, right? That Hashem directs things, but we still have free will, and the Torah bears this out even in times of the nevuah, the prophecy that was occurring. It still has to work on both levels, both by Hashem and the human agency involved. So how is it going to happen here? So the first cause was Joseph's death, right? Why is it repeated? Because why do we have to know that Joseph died? It's because it's related to the enslavement. It's not telling us simply that Joseph died. We already know that. But Joseph's death led to the servitude connected to Shibud Mitzrayim, right? Had Joseph lived on for some time, the Egyptians would never have ruled over his countrymen, right? So as long as Joseph was alive, the Israelites lived a life of comfort, right? That makes sense, right? Because what was Joseph to the Egyptians? Right, they loved him. So if Joseph was alive, the Egyptians wouldn't have dared to done anything to the Bnei Israel. All right, so the second cause, the Or HaChaim says, do we have a sheet? Do we have any more sheets? No, that's it. Okay. All right, sharing too. Sharing is caring. We love that. Some wives have to share with the husbands or husbands with the wives. That's really great. See, we're fostering shalom bias in our share, who's only for that, right? Dayenu, right? Oops, intimacy too. Okay. All right. The bottom of the first page, the second cause was the death of the brothers, right? V'chol is the second phrase of the pasuk. So as long as even one of the brothers was alive, right, then the Egyptians honored them. And we have a Gemara in Sota, right? And in the end of the Parsha last week, which talked about the burial of Yaakov. Where was he buried? Right in Hebron in Israel. And so I just brought the Gemara in Sota, just a part of it. It's a little bit bigger, right? I won't go into depth in it, but I gave you the makor of the Or HaChaim. So, right, based on the pasuk that right, Yosef had to go up. He asked special permission from the Pharaoh to go up to Canaan to bury the father, and the brothers went with them. They've had an entourage of Egyptians as well, maybe to keep them in place. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't so benign. Whatever, that's not our topic for today. But so the Gemara says that the servants of Pharaoh, the elders, and the elders of the land of Egypt are going first, and then the house of Yosef and the brothers. So they were second in importance to the Egyptians. But then at the end, when the Torah repeats, it says that Yosef returned to Egypt and his brethren, and then it says all of them that went up to bury his father. So it seems now that the brothers were before the Egyptians. So Rabbi Yochanan says, before the Egyptians saw the honor of the Jewish people, they did not treat them with honor. So the brothers were behind the servants of Pharaoh. And in the end, when they saw their honor, they treated the brothers with honor, right? So we see that, right? And that's the Goren HaAtad. I won't get into it. That's where the crowns were placed on the bier, the B-I-E-R, the coffin of Yaakov, and they saw how Yaakov and the children were honored, right, by the Gemara says, by the Bnei Ishmael, the Bnei Esav, their cousins, they were honored, right? So once the Egyptians saw that the brothers were on, they say, oh, we have to honor them too. So this is the point that the Or Chaim is making, that if the brothers were going to still be alive, even if Yosef hadn't, they still were going to give honor to the brothers and also wouldn't the Jewish people. That's the second reason. That's why the Pasuk emphasizes that the brothers also had died, right? Because they were another linchpin, a barrier to anything negative happening to the Jewish people. So that's the second cause. Okay, the third cause at the bottom of page 2 was the death of the entire generation, and he calls them the Jewish immigrants, right? As it says at the beginning of the first pasuk that we read this morning, and I was in the main shul, heard the Balkore laying so nicely, right? Haba'im Mitzrayma, right? So we once again had the 66 people mentioned in the Torah. Again, that's redundant. Why do we need to, the second time, why do we need to, have everyone, it's another question. But once again, here we see that the entire generation, meaning those that came down with Yaakov, also had passed on, those who immigrated in that original ones who were born in Canaan. So all of these people, and this is very interesting, right? Because he could see Yosef and his brothers. But now the Or Chaim has to do something very clever. Because why are the whole generation, why are they the linchpin? Right? Because you're asking, okay, I don't quite see where he's going with it. So he has to be very creative. So he says, all of these people were regarded as invited guests by the Egyptian, and there was no question of discriminating against them legally. All right, so now it's like, oh, wait a second, these were the first people that came in. And it's a question we've been dealing with in our country for many years now, right? And many of our families, have been immigrants. So I find it very resonant to our personal histories in America, as well as what's going on today. What is the place of an immigrant in society? And how are the Jewish immigrants dealt with? And he says, fascinatingly, I was surprised. This is a kind of a chiddush. He said that the Egyptians originally were very predisposed to the family of Yaakov. And this may also have been due to their being perceived as more intelligent than the local population, which is all right. This is a very intriguing idea, right? But it also speaks to the idea of, these were Chashuva people, right? The family of Yaakov were great people. They were what we call Chachamim and Chachamot, right? So they had a measure of intelligence, right? And we think about, how we are perceived among the nations of the world, even today. The Jewish people are thought of as being very intelligent. And then it becomes a question of, well, we can't discriminate. We want them to be here, not just not discriminate, but we want them. We welcome Jewish people into our community. But when we are welcomed into a community and we benefit to the current country and the host country, then what happens? Right? What happens? Yeah, they're so intelligent, and then the approach. Oh, wait a second, they're taking jobs from us. They're all the doctors and the lawyers and the professors, and what? They control everything. We let them in for 1 second, and now they're dominating everything. Isn't true, but that's the perception, right? So I find this really, really interesting, right? So that they could they could write later on in Pasuk 10, it says, Hava nischakma lo. What does nischakma lo mean? What does that mean? We can deal wisely with them. We can outsmart them and outwit them, right? So what the Orach Chaim is saying is that, oh, I guess they didn't feel so confident in the next generation of the Jewish people. Well, now that generation, they were special, but now the next Jewish people, they're not going to be so smart or successful. Now we can outsmart them. Okay, it's a bit of a question that I have. I'm not 100% convinced, but this idea of chachma, I find intriguing, right? Hava nischakma lo, because we find chacham and chachma in the Haggadah as well, right? Where do we find the chacham? Right, the first of the four sons. So there's an Indian of having a chacham at the Seder. Where else do we have chachamim at the beginning, right? Think of the beginning of the Seder. Where else do we? Exactly, very good, right? We say that even if we were chachamim, we'd still have to say the Haggadah and tell the story of the narrative. So here's a little bit of a drash, right? And here, in the context of Hava Nischakmalo, perhaps this is the Torah and the Haggadah, the Baal Haggadah, teaching us that we always have to be smart. We can never rest on our laurels, and we always have to be smart. So I give you a little bit also something for your Pesach Seder this week as well. All right, that was just a little bit of a digression, just to whet our appetite a little bit for more. But I find it so intriguing that when you have the same word in the same story three times, darsheni, you have to say darsheni, right? So we have chachma here, we have chachma a couple of times in the Haggadah, so we want to learn something from that. That's my basic approach, and if you have three, you always have it's a rule of three, right? You have three, then you have a drasha, devar Torah, what? A chazaka, right? So in a sermon, you have to give three examples, right? And then it's like there's something, more complete when you have three. Okay. We have to outsmart them. Yes. All right. So then it's adding an element of us versus them. So that's what the Orach Chaim is saying, right? So we've got to, in the view of the host country, okay, now we have to outsmart that. Okay. So the fourth one, right, and this is the next pasuk, is the enslavement of the Jewish population. Was there unusual fertility? All right, so I won't get into that's an interesting question on, how the Rashi there, and the six, I'm not going to mention the six, discuss it rather. The six births at once, right? It was like sextuplets, that's the word, yeah. It was, okay, interesting point. Okay, so any of the causes that had held back the Egyptians from some way of the keeping the Jewish population increase at bay had now been removed. When we keep this in mind, we understand why the Torah wrote, right, in that grammatical way, Ubnei Israel. It wasn't just Vayirbu, right, that just the fact that they increased, but they had already increased. So it's making that point clear that it wasn't just telling us the fact, but rather what the ramification was. There was a point there that since they had already increased, and that detail was to indicate how it served as a cause of the process of enslavement. Because now it was like, oh, the Egyptians fell. Now we really have to do something with the quote Jewish problem. All right, all of a sudden now we have the Jewish problem. First say that they were good, they were smart, they were contributing, But now that there's so many, now we can't deal with it. And I heard a share by Rabbi Isaac Bernstein, the great Irish rabbi from, he was a rav in Ireland and in England and also at the Jewish Center on the West Side for a number of years. He died tragically very young, but he was an incredible teacher of Torah and had the largest shiur in Europe. Hundreds of people came to hear his Parsha Shiurim. So he said that, knowing Irish literature as he did, he said that James Joyce was asked, how come there's really no anti-Semitism in Ireland? So Joyce responded, well, we only have a few thousand people. You don't have a problem. But it's only when you get more and more, and oh, now the neighborhood has changed and problem. Okay, that's all right. So it's interesting that you gave 4 causes. Now we give another cause, right? We always have to, why is there more anti-Semitism? You always have to find. So he actually gives another cause. And this one did not have to do with Joseph or the brothers or the generation of the immigrants. But in the next pasuk where it says, right, someone mentioned earlier, the Yaakam Melech Chodesh. There's actually a machlokas in the Gemara and in Meforshim, historically, was it a new king? Was a new pharaoh? That's the easy shot, right? It's simple, the way us simple people read it. Yeah, Melech Chodesh. It was a new pharaoh that came, and the new pharaoh changed the policy. Right? When you come in, you sweep everything else away, and you create your own direction as a leader. On the other hand, which is a little more profound, to say that it wasn't a Melech Chodesh in the sense of a new person, but rather that same pharaoh changed. Right? He saw what was going on, and he read the political and social situation. And he said, okay, now I have to do something with this Jewish problem again. So the second one accords really more with this sense of this burgeoning anti-Semitism, if we could call it that. All right, so let's go to the bottom paragraph. So our difficulty is that the Torah only needed to write that the whole generation had died out. Why did the Torah have to refer separately to all of them together? If there had not been enslavement, as long as a single one of that generation was alive, there most certainly had not been any enslavement as long as one of the brothers of Joseph himself had been alive. So perhaps he continues in this discussion. He says perhaps the Torah wanted to describe a gradual deterioration in the status of the Jews in Egypt, which began with the death of Yosef. Right? Yosef was the shining light of the Jewish people. Right? So once Yosef died, there was a diminution of the honor of the Jewish people. The brothers had a lot, but still not as much as with Yosef, right? When the leader dies, the light kind of dims. The brothers cast a lot of light as well, but they died a little more. And then the whole generation, now it's like the light was really much dimmer. And so that's what the Or Chaim is saying, that there was a gradual attenuation of the honor and the prestige of the Jewish people. So going on to page 4, I think. I said I wouldn't have trouble with the page numbers. Yeah. So Marty's pointing out that even if there was some honor the Jewish people, maybe it wasn't all what we say in halacha lishma. That maybe it wasn't, like for its own sake, right? Maybe they weren't genuine in their appreciation of the Jewish people. That would fit in with this mahalach of the burgeoning anti-Semitism, that it never was like a deep-seated love of the Jewish people, but it was all for the sake of their economic betterment of their society. One and then two. Yeah. All right. So the comment is that there's a correlation with you can see um, things going on in the current situation. I don't try to talk really about politics from the pulpit, but part of learning Torah is to apply it to our. That's why we call it timeless and timely. That these right ancient ideas are actually relevant to today. So one and then two. So that's a good question. I think everyone was loud and everyone heard that comment. Okay, some didn't. Yeah, the comment is that there was still subtle dislike of the Jewish people that was under the surface, because even Yosef said that the Bnei Israel were shepherds, and some of the gods of the Egyptians was the Set that we know from the Pesach story. Plus, there was some uh, distastefulness, right? So the Egyptians in the time of Yosef and the brothers, the Egyptians sat at a different table than the brothers. Yeah, and then this. So there's a no. Everyone heard it was up front. There was a comment that I don't know where it's based in, but there was a report somehow or some parish that Pharaoh was bought off by people in the government. So maybe the nobles or princes, and maybe there was an economic situation as well. I never heard that. I don't know. A good point. So you're pointing out, they're saying that Yosef also still, well, he may not have been beloved by the Amcha because they were enslaved. Yeah, they lost their their land, they lost their homes, and so maybe there was that underlying tension vis-a-vis Yosef as well. Right. It might have been another parish on the Melech Hadash. It might have been a new kingdom, the Hyksos, I think. That goes back to my ancient biblical archaeology and all that years ago. I've spent more time on the Meforshim, the more recently, but it's definitely something to consider. Okay, let's move on. All right, we have, I've set in also some reflection time. So if you haven't said what you want to say, have time in a few minutes. Okay. All right. So the end of the first paragraph here is that the principal reason was that proliferation of the Jews and their visibility frightened the local population, and they feared that the Jews would control the meat. I know, try to dominate them. Right, so it fits in with some of your comments that Chaim was mechavein to what you were saying. Okay, so now he brings in. You may counter according to Masorah that the Jews did not suffer discrimination as long as a single one of the tribal heads was alive, or according to our interpretation, or Chaim, even as long as the immigrant population survived. But our sages have not expressed themselves in such absolute terms. And we have in the Seder Olam, which is a sefer that was written about the history of the Jewish people from going back to Adam Arishon. 116 years elapsed between the death of Levi and the Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the author adds that the actual enslavement did not last for more than 86 years. This is a whole parsha in and of itself. I'm not going to get into that. Was it 86 years, 210? It's at 400. It's a big sugya from the birth of Miriam, which is interesting. And she was named Miriam because it has the word mar in it, the bitterness, which characterized the life of the Jewish people at that time. You have another drash for your Seder, right, for the maror. Okay, that's no extra charge for that one. Okay, so you see from the above that the last Abraham brother Yosef died, the Jews were still free. I conclude, therefore, that the enslavement did not commence until after the last of the immigrant Jews had died, and they were compared to the heads of the tribe because as long as they were alive, their very lives protected the Jews against legal discrimination. But you see, it's an interesting point, but you can feel, and I don't know the Or Chaim's history and what he experienced in his country, but you can't help but feel that there is a underlying kind of a locomotive under the surface of the anti-Semitism. And some of you pointed out, some of the subtle and latent and hidden sense of anti-Semitism, which we will come to in a second. Yeah. Right, they already have different loyalties, right? Oh, they want to go back to Israel. Okay, excellent point, and we'll have another few minutes to reflect in a moment. I wanted to bring you the pasuk that we mentioned before, talking about against a good lead-in. This is from the Torah itself, right? And the place where the Torah says that now there's a change in the attitude of the Egyptians, right? It's not like just one, but it's like Hava, like there's a group that we're talking about the Jewish problem, right? So let's outsmart them so that they may not increase, like pen year beth. Vahaya kisik when a war comes, that they will be the fifth column, and they will get out of the land. So there was the assumption, based on what I don't know, but there was an assumption that the Jewish people would not be supportive of the country. My father was, how many of you are Jewish war veterans? How many of you? How many of your families were Jewish war veterans? My father, we have a proud history of fighting in the wars from the Revolutionary War and onward, right? From the Torah synagogue, right? Right, Rabbi? Boys, right? So the fact is that there's no historical basis to think that Jewish people would not be patriotic, right? So Marty says it's pure anti-Semitism, and that is definitely a something to think about because there's no, in the sense, it's irrational, right? There's no right foundation, in fact, for these psychological moves. Irrational, exactly. Okay. Very good. Okay, let's just one more. The next page is page 5. Sforno, right? Italian medieval commentator in 1500. Balam and Aretz. What did they want? Listen to this. This is really interesting. He points out, at least in his view, point, that how were they going to get the Jewish people to get out? Right? So he says, Allah min haaretz, they will leave of their own free will. So now listen to this. Without our having to expel them. Whoa. That's a chiddush, right? When did people worry about having to, what he said? If we do not have adequate reason to expel them, we would become pariahs among our neighbors. That means that the countries of the world, the ancient United Nations, would be upset. They'll call out at the plenary session. They'll say Egypt is censured because they are doing something against the Jewish people. What a fascinating idea. I think like you, given your reaction, like maybe we're biased by the United, but still in the ancient world, I mean, do we have evidence that so many countries were so standing up for the Jewish people? I'm not sure, but this Sforno is very enlightening, right? So anyway, I just wanted to bring the Sforno because he gives another reason. So let's take a short moment here. And all of these points, right? Does it accord with your understanding of Jewish historical experience? Right? We've talked about anti-Semitism. We've talked about irrational basis. We talked about whether the United Nations would really stick up for the Jewish people. And what we've seen in our generation is definitely not. I think it is one of the great miracles that in 48, the United Nations actually did vote for Israel to be a country. So I think that is really a miracle that Russia also, because of the kibbutz movement, the socialism, going to have another foothold in the Middle East. It's a miracle. But the idea that nations of the world stand up for the Jewish people, not 100% our look at 1938, 39, 40, 40. Who stood up? Yeah, Robin. All right, so the comment is that Jews were expelled from many, many countries, and there haven't really been other countries that have stood up for the Jewish people against the expellers.
involved in finance, and the jealousy developed leads to the who said successful and make it not most of the art of the jealousy is there. Moved into the proper. I mean, living in houses is proper.
That's right. Right, we see that in the plagues, where we see that he had to jump, the Malcham Avos had to jump over. That means that a Jew was here and an Egyptian here, and that's why some of the Meforshim teach us that that's why the Jewish people were living in Goshen, right? They were living in their own little community to, okay, you've had some, yes. Very good. Oh, we're back here. Well, I just think that we're just raising just the situation. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Wait. Who was next? In the back, behind Marty, and then Marty. Okay. Fair enough. That sounds kind of anti-Semitic to me. Marty. So this might be part of the history, yeah. Okay, one more comment and then we will move on, yes. The Jews would be like, okay, another point. The point is to act like Jews, and meaning that to stick to our ways, is that what you mean? Values. So that's another question of where I think your point is that when we try to fit in, that's when we get into trouble. Okay.
I think that this is for human nature. There is always xenophobia. When it comes to anti-Semitism, it's xenophobia on steroids.
Okay, xenophobia is a big word. It means fear of the stranger, if I remember correctly.
But yeah, again, wherever you go, right, the person who's different, the one who is rejected. That's as I said, for human nature.
Okay.
I don't know if that's Jewish.
Okay.
It's a manifestation.
It's a big, right. It's right. We take it personally, right, when it is. That's what we're talking about. That. Yeah. Right.
But
because everyone is against the Jews, not just like in one country or different strangers that come in.
What is against?
That's why we are taught 36 times to love the stranger, right? Xenophilia or whatever. Okay, one more comment, and then we will. I just have a couple more points. No? Okay, so let's move on to. And these are all issues that we can discuss for a long time. Okay, I just wanted to bring out a couple of more points. Yeah, this is an interesting point. Shemot 1, pasuk Kaf Beis. right? Another point by Yitzav Paro L'chol Amo, right? So Paro commanded, his whole nation, not just the midwives, but the whole nation. Kol haben hayilod, right? Any right Hebrew, a Jewish boy that is born, hayaora tashlichuhu, you should throw him into the river. So here's an interesting point. I've always read it that the Jewish children, right, should be thrown into the Nile, right? Here, right here, right, the Jewish, but the UNCLOS points that out, right? So the UNCLOS is the Aramaic translation of the Torah. Right? So we learn a lot, not only that it's translation, but it's also understood as a perush, right? So UNCLOS is very, very important. I'm not going to get into his history today, but listen to what he says. He says every boy who was born to the Jews, li Yehudae, to the Jews. Why does he have to say the Jews? We already assumed that. So there's a chazal. Wait a second. Rashi doesn't give us the conventional, simple shot that it was about Jews. We don't even realize it. But Pharaoh, according to Chazal, he said that all Egyptian boys also should be sent into the river. Why? The astrologer, right? So fascinating idea. He had a astrological, right? We know that he had the Khartoumim. He had the astrologers who were on staff, right? He didn't just have the foreign minister and the domestic minister telling us we had to get rid of the Jewish people. We also had astrologers, and they said, wait a second, be careful, there's going to be a savior. But the astrologers didn't know everything. And they didn't know whether it was going to be a Jew or an Egyptian. So therefore, Pharaoh said, call everyone. So UNCLOS is what we thought, but now Chazal was telling us not just the Jews, but also the Egyptians have to be thrown into the river as well. All children that are born. What's the matter? Boys, all children, right? All boys. It's a good question. Good question. I don't know. All right, but anyway, Pharaoh, according to Chazal, therefore made a decree that day regarding the Egyptians also. Every son that is born, and it doesn't say, as English translated it, born to the Hebrews. So Pharaoh killed Egyptians, which I find fascinating because, and this is the point, since it's related to our role in the society, that the anti-Semitism is so pathological that the Gentiles end up killing their own people. Does that sound familiar, Sharon? Ah, so that's why I want to end up with that point, that this history of anti-Semitism is that the Gentiles, because they bring in the Jewish people, in England, they brought them in. In Europe, each country brought them in because of the mercantile profession and the money lending, because they couldn't, all of the, the history. They bring them in until they succeed, and then they kick them out to their own detriment. So anti-Semitism is pathological because another reason that it is that it hurts themselves, not just us. And there's something self-harming about it, to the extent that even in today, as you said, that they kill their own people and use them as shields so that they can kill Jews. We have plenty of room for them to come to our cheer. Wish everyone a great week. See you, please, God, next Thursday. Okay. Bakasha, bakasha. Hey, guys. I know I forgot to do it. I forgot to do it. I'll keep on my. Thank you.
Toda.
Hey, don't show them when it becomes a problem. I like the and like bringing a few more chairs. Okay. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Please God, and Madison Square Garden. One thing is. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally. That makes very, very nice. Hello. Interesting point. That's I didn't have a thought of that point. Good idea. Thank you. Thank you. Looking to you. Hello.
I went to, where were you on the red eye? So his explanation is that, at that time, it was back to what it was in Egypt, and why it was. They should pay up the Jews. They figured, what that means this is all the, his view was that coaches are also like any relationship get a business coach. And head coach as well. And then they should call the men for help. She wasn't talking about the service, men for help, and for residents. She was calling to more of the relatives. And that's why he couldn't really take any action, but knew that, was
The theory?
yeah, so I just think him and you went that. Yeah, by your promotion, that it was now, I guess, now confident.
Very interesting. Thank you for pointing that out.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you very much. That's interesting. Interesting point. I agree. I think that needs to be more defined, better defined, because if they're a fifth cone, means they're going to destroy it from inside. Right. Then why would they need to do that? And then why would they need to haul them in our? Yeah. Right. So that's a good point. Yeah. So, yeah. I just wanted to bring that for that self-hatred part. So, but anyway, definitely a good point. I think that really requires study and more that it requires to be studied. So, good point. Thank you.
In the.